Namaste, Adab, and Sat Sri Akal. My name is David Nachman. I'm one of the managing attorneys at the NPZ Law Group, and I'm here today with Snehal Batra, who's the managing attorney of our Raritan, New Jersey office. And Snehal and I were recently going over some paperwork for one of our marriage cases. And we always tell our clients up front that they're going to need their birth certificates in the process. And then we both looked at each other because we know that sometimes, especially given the population that we are often dealing with, that birth certificates are just unavailable. And so our clients sometimes say, okay, so if I don't have a birth certificate, how do I solve that problem? And Snehal, as an immigration lawyer, I'm sure that you've confronted this issue in the past. How do you deal with a birth certificate that's unavailable? First of all, I guess, where do you look to see whether a birth certificate is or is not available? I guess that's the first question. And then How do we deal with it?
Well, the first thing that I do want to mention is that documentation is very important in the immigration process because they help us to establish relationships between who is the petitioner and who is the beneficiary. And, you know, one of the key documents, of course, is the birth certificate. And that's what's considered a primary document. So it's used to verify your country of birth, who your parents are. So that is an extremely important document. And when you don't have a primary document, there are circumstances when immigration will accept a secondary document. In order to do that, though, we have to first look in the Foreign Affairs Manual, which is maintained by the Department of State, to check whether or not a particular country issues certain documents, what they should look like, what are acceptable, what are unacceptable. So that's the first place that we would look at to see whether or not a birth certificate is available and what should it look like. Because many times you have a short form of birth certificate, you have a long form of birth certificate. So we want to make sure we're using the correct one. And
Snehal, where do I look for the Foreign Affairs Manual? Is that something that is a top secret document that no one can get, or is it something that everyone has access to?
So that is available on the Department of State website. You know, it is a public document. It's not anything that is hard to find. Even if you just do a quick Google search for Foreign Affairs Manual, you can look in there and it should tell you, you know, what are acceptable documents. And also one of the other things, it's probably easier actually if you go on to the Department of State website and look up country reciprocity schedules, because that specifically you can just look up really quickly. Let's say you want to see whether a document from India is acceptable, you can check real quick. And the reason I mention India actually is because you wouldn't believe the number of clients that we've had that actually come to our office with the incorrect divorce decree, because many times they have what's called a deed of divorce, which is actually not an appropriate primary document. So again, going back to the Foreign Affairs Manual and the country reciprocity charts, first identify what is the document. Number two, does the client have this document? How can we obtain it? And if you're not able to obtain it, then we look at secondary evidence. And
what would be appropriate secondary evidence to look at?
So typically, we would be looking for baptismal records, school records, medical records, but one of the things that ends up happening most of the time is that if they're not going to have the birth certificate, it's very unlikely that they'll have the additional document. So that's when we need to look at creative ways. And one option is to do what's called an affidavit in lieu of a birth certificate. And basically what that does is, it is an affidavit, a sworn statement made by an individual who has personal knowledge about your birth. So they need to attest that, you know, that you are the child of so-and-so, where you were born, and then how they know this information. You know, they were present at your birth, or they received a phone call immediately after your birth. So typically 2 affidavits in lieu of a birth certificate would suffice.
Acha. Okay, so let me ask you something else then. And I'm sure this has happened to you because it always happens to me, is that when the individual says, I don't have the birth certificate, they say to you, okay, so what does it have to say? And then they're asking you if they're going to be putting together the document themselves, what does it need to say? So we obviously we deal in a world where the documents have to be real. So we don't want you to be bringing documents to us that are not real documents, okay? So I think that what Snehal's explaining is don't bring documents or don't go out and manufacture documents.
Right.
It's really important. And maybe you want to say a little something about that?
In Gujarati, sure, I can explain it in Gujarati. So basically, આપણે જ્યારે ગ્રીન કાર્ડ એપ્લિકેશન માટે ફાઇલ કરીએ તેમાં આપણે બતાવવું પડે કે આપણી પાસે બર્થ સર્ટિફિકેટ છે અને એવા ડોક્યુમેન્ટ્સ આપણી પાસે નહીં હોય તો પછી એફિડેવિટ એ લોકો એક્સેપ્ટેબલ કરવા દે. એટલે એફિડેવિટમાં આપણે બતાવવું પડે કે તમારો જન્મ ક્યારે થયેલો, કેવી તારીખ હતી અને જે એફિડેવિટ અને સ્વર્ણ સ્ટેટમેન્ટ માણસ લખે છે તેને કેવી રીતે પર્સનલ નોલેજ છે કે કેવી રીતે આ ખબર કે તમારું આ દિવસે જન્મ હતો. ને પછી એ એફિડેવિટ આપણે નોટરાઇઝ કરવું પડે. એટલે એકવાર એવું એફિડેવિટ બનાવીએ તો પછી આપણાથી યુઝ થાય બર્થ સર્ટિફિકેટ ને એવું ડોક્યુમેન્ટ નહીં હોય તો. So
perfect. So actually, Snehal and I would ordinarily, had the COVID-19 pandemic not happened, we would be on the road in India right now speaking at various organizations about this and other cutting-edge U.S. immigration law matters. But if you have any questions at all about the filing of immigration cases in the U.S., what types of documents you need, please feel free to contact us. We're here to help you in any way that we can. Snehal, you want to conclude maybe in Gujarati also?
Sure. તમારી પાસે કઈ બી ક્વેશ્ચન્સ હોય, ઇન્ફોર્મેશન જોઈતું હોય ગુજરાતીમાં તો અમારી ઓફિસમાં, હું ગુજરાતી બોલું છું, બીજા બી ઓફિસમાં છે ગુજરાતી, હિન્દી, પંજાબી. સો તમને કઈ બી હેલ્પ જોઈએ તો અમને ફોન કરો, પછી અમારાથી તમને હેલ્પ થશે. Thank you.
Thanks so much for being with us. Bye for now.
Bye.